Hey everyone, so I want to do another final review video for you all. This one's going to be stripped down, really focused. I would say stay very close to it for the final. For those that are going to be out of town, I am figuring out a way to um, get a way for you all to take the final. First things first is making sure that those we're ready for tomorrow. So you're on my mind. Uh, and we'll get to you all. It just may take a little bit of time. I'm hoping for Monday or Tuesday, the final. So the final is going to be uh, you'll have to choose 10 out of 20 short definitions. There'll be 5 multiple choice questions, each worth 4 points, and then 5 short essay questions with 1 essay question as a extra credit. Starting off with knowing what Reconstruction was, what was the failure, what was the goals of Reconstruction, going into the 4 izations of the Gilded Age, knowing how industrialization, unionization, immigration, and urbanization during the Gilded Age actually uncovered all these new modern problems, the problems of industrial labor, the problem of workers being taken advantage of as they try to unionize for better working conditions and worker rights. Most of the workers are immigrants, and also immigrants coming to this country, flooding a city like New York and unearthing all these new problems: urban housing, clean water, garbage, policing, fire department, everything. What it means to live in an urban environment where you live close to work, how to make the city beautiful, have Central Park, how to kind of balance all these different forces, and urbanization, meaning people living in urban centers. So know that, one, the Gilded Age and its growth of wealth uncovered all these problems. And then the Progressive Era tried to correct them, right? They tried to advocate for unions having the right to work, to collectively bargain. They tried to make industrial labor safer, more humane. Can we have collective ownership of the companies rather than single in a management, in a few at the top of management, trying to break up monopolies, making immigration a lot more easier and much more an easier transition for those coming to the city. And progressives try to make urbanization a lot more better. Having birth control, institutions that advocated for women's rights, children's labor, education, African Americans. So we have places like Hull House and people like Margaret Sanger who advocated for birth control. So know that the Wagner Act, for at least for some short answer definitions, know what the Wagner Act is during the New Deal and how that was for collective bargaining. Know what muckraking journalism is, right? Muckrakers were people that went to uncover the truth in labor, going into those factories and taking photographs of children. Know what yellow journalism is, right? Yellow journalism as speculation media, trying to adhere to your or appeal to your emotions rather than facts. Note the Volstead Act, and the Volstead Act trying to legalize, or the act to legalize prohibition. Know the USS Maine, the Gulf of Tonkin, the 3 R's of the New Deal: relief, recovery, reform. Relief, getting a bowl of food to people; recovery, medium term; AAA, the NIRA, getting industry, both in the cities and the countryside, back to work; and then long term, like Social Security and unemployment insurances. Know the civil rights leaders: W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Stokely Carmichael, Booker T. Washington, Malcolm X. Know their roles when they were advocating. Know that Booker T. and W.E.B. Du Bois were the kind of early 20th century civil rights activists. Booker T. and Martin Luther King are kind of similar in a lot of ways. They're kind of, let's say, nonviolent, where your radical ones tend to be more Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X, and W.E.B. Du Bois. Know what they were advocating for, specifically, like W.E.B. Du Bois, give me my rights now, and Booker T. Washington advocating for theory of accommodation, being good workers in a work environment that is very unbalanced. Know what fascism is, National Socialism is, communism. Know who Herbert Hoover is and what his legacy is in terms of the Great Depression. Know who passed the Great Society and what was the goal of the Great Society. When did the Great Society happen? Gay liberation movement, Red Power, Latino movement, women's movement. Know the movements of the 1960s. Know who the freedom riders were. Freedom riders were happening around John F. Kennedy's administration. People going from the north into the south, trying to advocate for change. They were on the buses and trying to uncover this absurdity that, like, if you're traveling from Chicago to Mississippi, that you go over an imaginary line and people are gonna have to get up on the bus and sit in different sections. Know the Harlem Renaissance, some famous figures from it: Bessie Smith, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Langston Hughes, Ralph Waldo Ellison, the writers, what it was, an artistic movement, fashion, jazz, dancing, literature, and how it was a growth of African urban culture that ended with the Great Depression. When the Depression hit, basically signaled the end of the Harlem Renaissance. Know the Watergate scandal. Know what happened. Eventually, the fact that Richard Nixon actually left office during Watergate. What led to it? Him organizing a break-in to the Democratic National Convention headquarters in the Watergate Hotel. Know the legacy of Watergate. What has it meant to American society in terms of the growth of cynicism. Know the famous women of the progressive era. Your Jane Addams, Alice Paul, Ida Tarbell, Frances Perkins, Margaret Sanger. Ida Tarbell was a great writer who wrote about monopolies and Standard Oil. Alice Paul, Jane Addams, what their goals were, who was working for Hull House. Margaret Sanger and the birth control movement, and who Frances Perkins was, eventually becoming the first female Congress member. Know what was the result of the Spanish-American War. The Spanish-American War was a very, very little war at the turn of the century, but small, but very, very influential in terms of American society. We become a superpower. That superpower that will influence world events, and what we gain from it, what territories, the Philippines, Cuba, what territories we did gain: Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. Know the causes of the First World War: the military system, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, revolution, why they were the causes of the First World War. Know the 13th, 14th, 15th, 18th, 19th, 20th Amendments. Know what they did, which one was the lame duck amendment, which one was citizenship, voting for African Americans, voting for women. Know birthright citizenship. Refresh yourself with why we actually got involved in World War II with the Japanese attack. What did it do in terms of American involvement in the war, having women enter the workforce in large numbers, putting an end to the Great Depression, and also increasing hostility to Japanese Americans. There'll be a potential essay question on Reconstructions, the successes and failures of Reconstruction, presidential Reconstruction, radical Reconstruction under the radical Republicans. Know the Progressive Era, and how it immediately followed the Gilded Age and what was it trying to do, and how that turning moment of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire led to the women's movement, led to the labor movement, and changes in American society. How the women who died had their family, let the public come see what this new industrialized labor that takes advantage of people results in. There'll be a question on the civil rights movement. of the 1950s and the 1960s. We're kind of backing up the beginning of the civil rights movement today, arguing more that it doesn't quite start with the, let's say, Kennedy and the turbulent 1960s, but really, I think we're now advocating more under Eisenhower's administration, coming out of World War II, how World War II changed African Americans' place in America, fighting for freedom in a segregated army, coming back and experiencing oppression and segregation at home. Then we have Emmett Till's murder that will kind of wake up the nation to a lot of what's happening in the South. Rosa Parks on the buses in the South. Little Rock and desegregating of schools, Brown versus the Board of Education, and then eventually the Martin Luther King movement, SNCC, CORE, the Freedom Riders, Malcolm X's Nation of Islam, the Selma Bridge, and how voting rights in 64, civil rights in 64 passed by Johnson, and then voting rights in 1965, and the Great Society really changed not only the political map of the United States, i.e. the Democratic Party losing power in the South, but also refashioning African Americans' role in the United States. Understand what the Cold War was, between who, what were the ideological differences, what events led to it, how does the atomic bomb influence the Cold War? Was the atomic bomb the first move in the Cold War? Did we drop one on Hiroshima against the Japanese, and then after the Soviets declared war on Japan, we dropped another one to send a message to the Soviets? How much did keeping the Soviets out of the conversation in terms of atomic secrets, and making sure that we took more control in Southeast Asia after the end of World War II, led to the Cold War, how Stalin, even after Operation Barbarossa, Hitler invades Russia, Stalin is calling for the opening of the Second Front, which we don't do. England and the United States invade North Africa, and the Second Front doesn't open until June the 6th, 1944, with D-Day. So Stalin has a lot of anger towards the West because they haven't been helping out the United States. Then we stop giving money to the Soviets, and this just increases tension between the West and the East. As the Second World War ends, we have security interests in Berlin, Southeast Asia, eventually the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then the ideological differences. One is a capitalist society and a Western liberal democracy in the United States. Know what that is. And the other is a communist society that is based in Marxism. Know like the 5 stages of Marxism, what they communism, what they want to try to create in terms of their society, and how that's going to butt heads against the United States. Understand that our understanding of freedom post-Cold or post-World War II in a Cold War sense is simple. Who has freedom? Who does not? A lot of the wars that we get into, the proxy wars in Greece, Korea, Vietnam, a lot of them are not just so much between communists and people wanting democracy. A lot of it has a lot to do with decolonization, like the French leaving Vietnam, Japan kind of leaving Korea after World War II, and these countries trying to figure out like how they're going to remake themselves after their colonial overlords have left. It's not as simple that, oh, they're communists and these people want democracy, but we would kind of choose sides, and in choosing that side, fashion those other people as communists. So Ho Chi Minh, probably as he was doing involved in the Vietnamese Revolution and Civil War, was really trying to get the French out, not so much aligning himself with China and Russia, but he does because he wants weapons. But we view the world through those who have freedom and those who have not, both domestically and internationally. Domestically, we've become very, very paranoid. We've become a conformist society through television. Look at how the Marshall Plan, we weaponize money and rebuild Europe. We rebuild Germany, Italy, and then in Asia, Japan. The proxy wars that we fight, and the Soviets fight. So we fight Greece, Korea, Vietnam. The Soviets get involved in Afghanistan, and then as well, the weapons race, the atomic arms weapon race. After the 1950s, when the Soviets get the bomb, or develop their own bomb with secrets from the United States, we start in that insane nuclear arms race with the Soviets. So know what events, security interests, and the ideological conflicts that prompted the Cold War. Know the causes of the First World War: imperialism, colonialism, secret alliances, and militarism, and how that all led to the First World War. What events led the United States to join the First World War? Know how we're financially involved, both in the Central Powers and the Allies, and then eventually the United States will join the war effort with the attacking of the Lusitania by German U-boats and the Zimmermann Telegraph. The Zimmermann Telegraph is that telegraph between the United States, from here, that the British intercept the Zimmermann Telegraph from Germany going to Mexico, telling the Mexican government, if you invade the United States, we, the Germans, will support you in getting back Texas, California, Arizona territories, New Mexico territories they lost to the United States. So we get involved when our money is threatened, the Lusitania is attacked, and the German Zimmermann note is uncovered. Also, understand, how did we become a superpower? We didn't just the minute we were created, become a superpower, right? We were like this kind of offshoot of 13 colonies that by the time we start our class, we're emerging out of the Civil War. We have some industrial power. We have a little bit of a head start. We're kind of to expand west. But by the time we get to the Watergate scandal, or even the Second World War, ending of the Second World War in the 1945, we are a superpower. How did this happen? Like, how do you make sense of why America becomes, by the 1950s, one of the most affluent societies in the history of the world? Examine how timely leadership, that could be Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Lyndon Johnson, Ida Tarbell, Francis Perkins, Eleanor Roosevelt, how these leaders came around at a certain time and helped America gain prestige and power in the world. How FDR got the country out of the Depression and through the Second World War. How Truman's decision to drop the bomb, good and bad, increased American power. Look at progressive legislation from the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the Reconstruction Amendments during the Civil War, the progressive legislation of Theodore Roosevelt that created the Pure Food and Drug Act, which established the Food and Drug Administration that regulated food safety for people buying food at grocery stores. Also created more health in the United States. The Great Society Act, right? Expanding voting and democratic rights to American citizens. The war on poverty, trying to eradicate poverty as the country is incredibly affluential. The New Deal to get the country out of the Great Depression, but also expand, let people have a safety net in terms of economic trouble. War. World War I, World War II also helped the United States become a superpower. For one, World War II got us out of the Great Depression, but our main competitors, European powers, will destroy themselves twice in the 20th century. And the United States comes out of it even stronger each time. So the First World War, we see Germany, France, and England, and Russia destroy themselves. Then we emerge as a creditor nation. Fascism, National Socialism emerge in Germany. We have Hitler. Europe destroys itself again. Germany is completely destroyed after World War II. Parts of Russia are destroyed. The economy in Russia is really struggling. England would hand over its empire to the United States. The French would actually scale back and remove themselves from Southeast Asia. And the United States is really the only one left standing. Our nation is never touched. So even foreign wars helped the United States. Revolutions, the Chinese Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Cuban Revolution, all these revolutions had an influence on the United States. Technology, we were a technologically advanced country. Thomas Edison and all his inventions helped the United States. Also, we invented the atomic bomb. That bomb is the main weapon of the 20th century, and we had it, and we were the first to develop it, and we used it. So that gave us a lot of military strength in the world. So by the time maybe all these confluencing different factors came together, timely leadership, progressive legislation, war, revolutions, technology, what emerged is an United States that is incredibly powerful. There will be an extra credit question on the purposes and strategies of Johnson's Great Society, such as what is he trying to achieve with the war on poverty? Why does he pass Medicaid? Why did he pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965? Right? Why do we need a Voting Rights Act? Civil Rights Act of 1964, Department of Affirmative Action, Department of Urban Housing and Affirmative Action. What were the goals and purposes and strategies of these plans, and what were they trying to eradicate? I would say stay very close to this review. And if you look into the things that I said here, you should do fine on the final.